What's going on YouTube? It is Texans Take over here, back with another video. In today's video, we have our first round predictions in the NFL draft. You got two videos today. So you got day one of the NFL draft, my predictions, which is this one here. And then later on, you're going to get my day two predictions, which is two and three, which is why there is a round two and three here. So every player that goes in round one is not going to be available in round two and three. I'm just splitting it up into two different videos because I think that's what makes most sense since it's being split into 2 days. So you can watch it on Thursday compared to this one, and then watch it on Friday and compare to that other video. So we're here, round one, my official NFL mock draft. And here at number one, we're not looking at a CB, we're looking at a QB, and that's Francis Mauigoa out of Indiana. Fernando Mendoza out of Indiana, not Francis Mauigoa. Um, Sorry, that was just a complete blunder there. I don't know how I messed that up, but Fernando Mendoza out of Indiana, the 6'5", 225 quarterback, who can make every throw on the field, led Indiana to a national championship after transferring from Cal, where he had some promise, but really showed it under Kurt Cignetti this past year at Indiana. I think this has been the pick since the Raiders got the number one overall pick. Obviously, Kirk Cousins is there, so can take some pressure off Mendoza if Mendoza just isn't cutting it the first couple of weeks of the season, or they don't want to rush him and start him, like week 4 or 5, but I think he'll start immediately. I think this is one of the best fits for the Raiders overall, and I think Mendoza is a great player. And I think, the Raiders could be a sneaky good team with the amount of additions they had in this offseason, as well as keeping Max Crosby somehow. I don't know how that happened, but they did after trading him to the Ravens and then not actually going through. But Mendoza to the silver and black, I think he's the guy that can navigate Vegas perfectly out of any young dude that's going to get some money. I think Mendoza is certainly the one you want to pay your attention towards. Um, Number two, uh, the New York Jets. I do have Arvell Reese going here. I do think he's a developmental project. If you're looking for an edge rusher, if he's an off the ball linebacker, you've got one of the best off the ball linebackers in this draft, if not the best. I think it's between him and his teammate in Sonny Styles. But if you have him as a developmental edge piece, I think the Jets are certainly a team that you're not looking to compete this year. You're waiting for your quarterback, so you can definitely try to develop Arvell Reese into an edge rusher, which I think a lot of teams are going to try to do. But I think the Jets, have that gap year that they're not trying to compete with. So I think Arvell Reese does make a lot of sense. I think if he develops a pass rush bag, he does have the athleticism and the size to be a very decent edge rusher in the NFL. So I think it makes a lot of sense for the Jets, and that's why the selection goes in there at number two. At number three, to the Cardinals, we do have Francis Mauigoa going here. So this has been my top three for a while. I know I haven't done first round mock drafts on my channel until this past week or so, but every time I have done one, it's been these top three. Reese, Mauigoa, and then obviously Mendoza at one. But Mauigoa, I think, slots in at right tackle perfectly for the Arizona Cardinals. You're in a situation where you could go and move up and go get Ty Simpson this year. Maybe you or the Jets try to pay that premium to move up to, a spot like 28, um, 21 even, to try and go get your guy at quarterback. But I think Francis Mauigoa is a good player. I think if you're the Cardinals, you try to do what the Jets did and kind of establish your offensive line so your quarterback's not going into a bad situation. And once the Jets get their quarterback, I think they'll actually be a pretty decent team and, get that head coach in there that they need. But I think Francis Mauigoa is a good player. And, I think he'll slot in at right tackle right away. And he's super athletic. He's only 20. He's 20 and a half, and then I think he'll be 21 by the time the NFL season starts. So, young player who's athletic. He can slot in at guard if you need to, but I think he's perfect at right tackle for the Cardinals. So that's why that selection goes there at number three. Number four to the Tennessee Titans. I have them going with Jeremiah Love here. I think it makes the most sense. I could see Sonny Styles going at four to the Titans, but I think they look for a true pass rusher. So I think if it's anyone at number four other than Jeremiah Love, it's actually David Bailey. But, in this one, we do have Jeremiah Love going there. I think he's an exceptional player. I think he will really elevate the game of Cam Ward as well as the whole offense. I think Chimere Deke is a good piece. I think, Iron Manor's a decent piece as well, that you can kind of build around. You don't really want them to be your guys, but they can definitely be guys in your room. But I think Jeremiah Love is one of those guys that is going to be your guy in that room. You have running back lockdown for the future. Obviously, Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears aren't horrible players. They can give you production if you don't draft Jeremiah Love at the running back spot. But I think you kind of need that bell cow that you can just turn to and give carries to, and know that he's going to be as productive as possible on every given snap. I think Jeremiah Love is certainly that, and I think the Titans, who had a very decent free agency, could be a decent team headed into next year. Pick number five to the Giants. I actually don't have the Giants selecting here. I have the Kansas City Chiefs trading up here to go get their guy, and for me, the Chiefs are going to be moving up with their two picks, force this trade through. Giants get 9 and 29. I think that 29 is definitely going to be an interior defensive lineman there. Probably a one tech who's just a big guy that can plug the gap. So you're hoping like a Caden McDonald falls there, or you pick a little bit higher and go with like a Lee Hunter or something like that after losing Dexter Lawrence. But now you pick back to back at 9 and 10. I think there's definitely two guys that everyone has in mind for the Giants there. But here at number 5, I do have the Chiefs moving up to go get their pass rusher in David Bailey. 15 sacks for Tech last season. Played a lot better against worse competition, but then had a really good game against Oregon too, who's a really good offensive unit last year in college football. I think it makes a lot of sense for them. To go out and get their guy off the edge that they, need to rely on. Such a good pass rusher. You see the grades are against, some of the lesser opposition. I mean, BYU and Oregon are definitely great teams as well, so don't put that past him. But I'm talking about this game against Caleb Lomu here. I thought he struggled a decent amount, but he grew him to his own throughout the season. So I think if the Chiefs are wanting to move capital to go get their guys, then I think moving up to number 5 to go get David Bailey does make a lot of sense for them. And I think it makes a lot of sense for the Giants to kind of trade back and get some more capital there, especially if they need to attack the interior defensive line, which they do. Number 6 with the Cleveland Browns, I have back-to-back trades here. I mean, the Giants could certainly move back up and try to go get Sonny Styles, but I think you just make that selection with Sonny Styles there anyway. But I have the Dallas Cowboys trading up here, and I have the Browns getting some more value than the Giants did, I guess you could call it. But we're going to force this trade here. Browns get 2 first-round picks this season. Obviously, it could be a little different in terms of the return, but we're just doing this here. But I do have the Cowboys moving up to go get Mr. Sonny Styles out of Ohio State. I think if you're the Cowboys, you're looking for one premium player rather than 2 decent players. You know, you could get maybe McCoy at 12 and then Falk at 20. But I think you'd just rather Sonny Styles if you're a Cowboys fan, in my opinion. And then you can look to, corner later in the draft. You don't have a second round pick, but you do have a third round pick, I do believe. No, you don't. Oh, yeah, you do. You have San Francisco's third round pick from the Odigizua trade. But, you can definitely look corner there. I think this corner depth is pretty deep. I think down that board there, I like Dalen Everett. Kilgore's a nickel, but I like Julian Neal. I like Hezekiah Massis too. So I think the Cowboys do have options at corner down the board, but I think linebacker is such a glaring need, and I think Sonny Styles is one of the best players in this draft. So if you're able to facilitate that trade with the Browns, I think it benefits both of y'all. And I think Sonny Styles is a premium player. He's my number 2 player on my board, so I think the Cowboys would smash it out the park if that was the case. Here at number 7 with the Commanders, I have them going to wide receiver. That rim's incredibly thin, and I have Terry McLaurin pairing up with a Buckeye in Cardinal Tate out of Ohio State. Can run every route on the field, is good underneath in the intermediate and over the top. He can be your wide receiver one of the future and doesn't have that pressure right away just because, you know, Terry McLaurin's there. And then, you do have some pieces that you need to build offense around with Jaden Daniels, having health concerns. So you do need to get some pieces in this draft to build around. Cardinal Tate's certainly one of them. I do expect them to probably try to go running back. You don't have a second round pick because you traded it to Houston for the Laramie Tunsil deal, but Tate's a good player, and he'd certainly elevate that receiver room that needs a lot of help right now. So I think it's a no-brainer if Tate is there at 7. I think it's a no-brainer. If any receivers there at 7 for the Commanders to take, unless it's Jeremiah Love there. Number 8 to the Saints, I have Ruben Bain here. I just think he can play anywhere across that defensive line for you and, be very productive and a solid player. His rookie year till his end of time in New Orleans has some not character concerns, but the situation I'm referring to. So it's something to be mindful of, but I do think he's a very good player, and I think he'll be solid in the NFL. And I think he could do some very, very good things there in New Orleans, just being on the interior defensive line or even playing edge if he needs to. Really good bull rush, really good quick first step. And he, ever since that Ohio State game, played with an intensity that no one else had, and really just dominated for Miami. So I think it makes a lot of sense for Bain at 8 to the New Orleans Saints. 9 to the Giants after trading with the Kansas City Chiefs. I have them going with Caleb Downs first. I think this is your guy who you can kind of mold into what John Harbaugh did with Kyle Hamilton. After moving over from Baltimore to the Giants, I think he could, emulate Caleb Downs into a similar player who's just around the box rather than a traditional free safety. I don't think that's what he should be in the NFL. I think he should be, a safety that rolls down, plays in the box, uses uses his instincts and is always around traffic rather than, being that last man back deep to really, you know, save them. So I think Caleb Downs makes a lot of sense there. And then here at number 10, I do have them going with a receiver that they're heavily linked to. I think it makes a lot of sense actually if they went with Vega here, but I have them going with Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State. It seems like he's being linked to the Giants more and more every day. And I can see a world where Downs is at 5, and they just select him there. And then, Tyson at 10, they just go with him there. But I think if you're not concerned about the injury history with Jordan Tyson, he's probably your wide receiver 2, maybe even 1 in this class. So it looks like the Giants are overlooking that. It seems like they're very interested in Jordan Tyson. He's a very good player, don't get me wrong, and that is why that selection goes there at 10. Here at 11 with the Dolphins, I think you're in love that Delane's just fell this far. Um, and I think you got to make this selection right away if you see it available to you. So, Mansour Delane to the Dolphins, you need a corner so badly, and I think the way that Jeff Hafley plays, Delane can be a very good guy in zone coverage. I know he's very good in man as well, but I feel like the Packers are a very zone, man zone heavy team. So I think Delane suits that perfectly. Um, so that's that selection there at 11. As at number 12 to the Browns. You move back and you're able to get your guy at left tackle still in Monroe Freeling. That trade reminds me of that Paris Johnson trade that the Cardinals did with the Will Anderson deal. You move back and then you still get one of your starting offensive linemen. This is a guy that can play left tackle for you, and I would expect to play left tackle in your future as well. Developmental player, and I think he would make your best 5 on the offensive line. I don't think they want Titus Howard to play left tackle for them, although he's done it in the NFL before. Um, so yeah, I think Monroe Freeling's definitely a great pick there for the Browns at 12. So you move back and you still get the guy that I probably would have even considered at 6 to them, but I think I would have gone with Tate if I stayed at 6 with the Cleveland Browns. But you move back, you get Monroe Freeling, and I think that's a great pick for you. Here at number 13 to the Los Angeles Rams, we have Spencer Fano going here. I think this is a guy that could play right tackle for them, and then even kick inside at guard if they do need some guard help. Obviously, Avila's there, and then is it Jackson still there? But the Rams are a very solid offensive unit. I think they could use some help along the offensive line, especially just as coverage with injury and stuff like that. Um, but I think he's a great player. I think he's going to be a very versatile piece along the offensive line. Um, and I think as a Rams fan, you don't really have that many needs. You address them all in free agency, to be honest. Um, you could start over Coleman Shelton. Sorry, it's Kevin Dotson actually at your right guard spot, I think. Um, but Avila's still there, and then Jackson is your left tackle. Excuse me, I kind of got mixed up there. But I think Fano could even start over Jackson, or not Jackson, excuse me, Avila or Dotson. I think he's that good of a player. Fano is. So I think this would be a great pick for the Rams at 13. I could definitely see it be a receiver though, because you got Puka, you got Devontae, and then your next one is you lose Tutu Atwell, so it's probably Kanata Mumpfield. So I think Fano's a slam dunk there at 13, and I think it makes a lot of sense for the Rams to look to the offensive line in this draft, especially early on. So Fano at 13 makes a lot of sense to me. And then 14 here to the Baltimore Ravens. I think if the board falls this way, you're definitely in contention with Kenyon Sadiq here. But I'm going Olavega Ione. I think this could be a guy that, maybe even goes 10 to the Giants if it's not Jordan Tyson. Slots in, plays right away for Baltimore. I think he's a really good player. I think he's a top 10 player in this class in terms of talent. I think it's just that he plays guard. He'll be bumped down the board just slightly. And here for the Ravens, if he's there at 14, I think it makes a ton of sense for him to go there. I could see him go, even at 12 to the Browns potentially. If you want to play Elton Jenkins at center, if you want to play Titus Howard at left tackle, then you can makeshift your offensive line around Olavega or Oliva Vega, not Olavega. But I think he's such a good player. Again, another top 10 player in this class, dropping a little bit just because of the position that he does play. I think another one who's around that top 10 range that's dropped a little bit is Downs, just because he plays safety. Styles, I think, is top 2 player in this class, but drops because he's an off the ball linebacker. 15 to the Buccaneers. I think this is so easy. If Kenyon Sadiq's available at 15, I think you just got to turn that card in. If Vega falls to 15, then I think that makes a lot of sense for you as well. But Sadiq's such a good player, such a good athlete at the tight end position that I think you can do a lot of fun things with him. Basically, your improvement on K. Dotton, who you did re-sign this offseason, but I don't think that stops you from looking at tight end to give another option for Baker um, to really enhance his play. You get another Oregon guy in there with Tez, and then you got Bucky, and now you'll have Sadiq there. So, um, really good offensive unit that you're building in Tampa. After losing Mike Evans, you could look to another receiving guy. And I think Kenyon Sadiq could be, a potential slot in the NFL, a big slot as a tight end, kind of, off the line. Um, but I think he could also develop into an inline tight end. I just think he's better as a receiver, or as a receiving tight end rather than, a guy that's going to be in line for you in blocks and releases. At 16 to the Jets, though, you go with Arvell Reese to start off this draft, and I'm fully in the belief that you go edge and then wide receiver with the first two picks. And I think Mekhi Lemon makes a lot of sense here to be that slot guy. Obviously, Garrett Wilson can play your slot, but I like him more as the X on the outside, and then Mekhi Lemon as your Z or your slot guy. So I think this makes a lot of sense for New York. I think you're just basically a quarterback away from competing at this point. So maybe you're the team that moves up to go get Ty Simpson to see if you can compete this year. Maybe you just wait another year because you're not totally sold on Ty Simpson. It's yet to be seen, but I think Mekhi Lemon's such a good player, and just such a gritty player, to be honest. And I think if you throw the ball towards him, he'll make a play with it. Um, and he plays a lot bigger than 5'11". He plays like he's 6'2", 6'3", but I really like that pick there for New York at 16. As we move on to 17 to the Detroit Lions, and I think this makes a lot of sense just with the way they play. I'm going Caden Proctor to the Detroit Lions. I just think he's a left tackle that's going to lean on you. He can play guard for you. He can play right tackle for you. He can play left guard, right guard. Anything but center, really, Caden Proctor could play in the NFL. He's got the size to play left tackle. I don't know if he's got the athleticism. That's why I keep stressing that he might need to cut down his weight a little bit. Um, and um, sorry, I just completely blank. But with that size, I think he can lean on opposing defensive linemen, and I think he'll be a very good player in the NFL, especially if he, um, is the athlete that we think he can be, especially if he cuts down some weight. So, really good player in Caden Proctor. I think the Lions would love the fit there, just because they love their maulers, their big dudes that can just absolutely power over you. Caden Proctor certainly that, and I think he could definitely go off the board around this range here. And I think Detroit's a very good fit for him. Here at 18 to the Minnesota Vikings, I have Dylan Thieneman going here a lot, but I am actually going to trade this pick, or not trade this pick. Sorry, I'm actually going to alter what I usually do here between Thieneman, and I'm actually going to go Jamar McCoy. I think they could use some help at corner, and I think this is a very good fit for them. I think he's arguably a top 10 player again, but that injury concern is real, and that's why he's fallen down some people's boards. But I think he's such a good player. I think he could go around the top 10, to be honest. I think if the Rams needed corner as bad as they used to, he could definitely go there. I think he could go 11 to the Dolphins instead of Delane. Um, but I think Delane's probably CB1 in this class, which is why I have him there at 11. But McCoy, such a good player, and I think would start right away for the Vikings. It's really that how well can he bounce back from that ACL injury. ACL is not as significant of an injury as it used to be, but for the amount that Jermon McCoy stepped away from football, how long it was, you kind of put some eyes towards it. But I think he's such a good player that you just put that to the side if you're Minnesota, because he's there at 18. And then here at 19 to Carolina, I actually have a trade here, and this is with the Cleveland Browns. Sorry, I believe. Yes, it's with the Cleveland Browns. Sorry, I was trying to make out my notes. Um, Okay, no, the Panthers are not trading. Excuse me, sorry. I have them going with Keldrick Falk here at 19, just because of the way they play. I think Falk could definitely be, a five tech in the NFL, just because of the size he possesses. He can eat up a lot of space, lining up over the tackle there. He's done before in college. He's a really good run defender, and I think that's what the Panthers need. And I really like Keldrick Falk as a player, so I think it makes a lot of sense for the Panthers there at 19 if he's available. Um, you know, I think he's a high floor guy, and I think he's going to go a lot higher than people expect. I know some people are really not big fans of Keldrick Falk, but I think with the size, the arm length, and just the ability to stop the run, a lot of teams are really going to value him in the NFL. So he goes here at 19 to the Panthers. Here at 22, the Cleveland Browns. Omar Cooper is my selection here. You went with, if we go back to you, you went with Monter Freeling to begin with after trading down. Then you get Omar Cooper. I think that's a great return. If you move with the Cowboys, Freeling and Cooper, I think two guys you could consider at 24 and 6, but you get an extra first round pick in there, so you still have 24 available to you to go out and do something. 21 here with the Steelers. I do have a trade, and that is with the Chicago Bears, who do have some extra draft capital this year. I think it'd take like 89 or 129. So like 89, and then you get like 135 back. Um, I think can make some sense. So we'll do that. The Chicago gets 21 and 135. Steelers get 25 and 89. So they move back 4 spots, but move up 40 spots in the long haul later in the draft. But here at 21 2, the Bears, you move up because this guy's available to you still at 21. He falls a little bit down the board. I don't know if this happens in real life, but you're about to go to two teams that could look at safety. So you move up, you stop them. After losing Kevin Byard, you go with a very rangy and athletic safety in Dylan Thieneman out of Oregon. So the idea for moving up is if you're Chicago, wherever you are, you'll be down here. There you are at 57. You have so much draft capital to play with 57, 60, 89. You can move around the board, especially if your guy is there. And I think Dylan Thieneman, if he's at 21, could be a guy you certainly are intrigued with. So I think it's a no-brainer for you to move and go get your guy there. So it's an interesting pick, but I think Dylan Thieneman's a great player. And I think that would be a lot of fun there if you are Chicago. Here at 22 with the Los Angeles Chargers. I actually had this at Chase Basantis, but I'm going to change it to Manuel Pregnon here. I don't know if he's likely to be the guard one off the board, but I think if you're um, the Chargers, you know what Jim Harbaugh wants to do, and that's to run the ball and really, wear you out. And I think Emmanuel Pregnon's certainly a player that does do that for you. I think I think they love Vega at 22, but I don't think he's going to fall that much. So you can see the Chargers move around. I just don't know if they don't move their picks really um, wherever they are. They would be somewhere around here, I feel like. Yeah, 55. Yeah, they have, what, 5 picks in this draft. I don't think they're going to be a team that trades up. I think they could be a team that trades down. Um, and allows a team to maybe move up and get a quarterback or, just go get their guy and then they pick up extra draft capital in the process. But Manuel Pregnon at 22 makes a lot of sense for me. I think the Chargers do need some top end talent. Had such a great year for Oregon as well after transferring out of USC that I think some teams could just be really intrigued with the idea of Emmanuel Pregnon. I think he slots in perfectly over Trevor Penning for Los Angeles, so I think you could reach a little bit to go get your guy if you're the Chargers, and if your tackles stay healthy, then you have one of the best rosters in the league. But here at 23 to the Philadelphia Eagles, I do have Akeem Mesidor going here. Um, I think he's a good player that could have instant production in the NFL. I just think some teams are going to be turned off by the fact he'll be 29, or maybe even 30 if you accept his fifth-year option after his first deal. So really old as a collegiate player, but I think he's an exceptional player. Really good pass rush bag. I think a lot more consistent than Ruben Bain was over the course of the year. I don't think he has the higher ceiling between the two, but I think he is an incredible player. I think he'll give Philadelphia instant production off the edge that they're looking for. And I think if he's available at 23, it does make a lot of sense for Philadelphia there to go with Mesidor. At 25 to Cleveland, you've had one of the best drafts so far. You've gone with Freeling and Cooper. And I think that you could look back to the defense with this one. And I think you could go with your edge to play opposite of Myles Garrett. And for me, I have Zion Young all the way up here. I think he's such a good player. Really good production in the SEC. I think he could fall or find his way into the first round. 8 sacks this past season, a younger guy that can play all 3 downs. Um, athletic limitations. I don't think there's too much. He's a really good player, and I think he has a really good pass rush bag, just able to dominate guys in the SEC, which is something you don't see too often. But a really good player there, Zion Young is. I think he's a good fit for Cleveland, just to absolutely wreak havoc opposite of Myles Garrett. Um, so I think you're taking him with the idea that he can be a guy that gets the quarterback pretty consistently because teams are so heavily reliant on stopping Myles Garrett, stopping Mason Graham. Now you have add Zion Young to the mix. You have a really good defensive line there for Cleveland, and I think you've probably had the best draft so far with Freeling, Cooper, and Young. 3 guys I really like. Um, and 3 guys that I could see being overly productive in the NFL. Here at 25, though, with the Steelers, you move back with the Bears, so they can go get Dylan Thielen in there. And here at 25, I think you could look back to the receiver spot. You don't have your yak guy, and I think Casey Concepcion could definitely be that in the NFL. One of my favorite players in this draft class. I think if he falls to 28 with Houston, I actually just want him to go there just because of how athletic he is, how good he is after the catch, how good he is at creating separation as well. I think this could be, you have your Pittman, your Metcalf. Your Metcalf's going to be a burner. Your Pittman's going to be the guy that's over the field, does the dirty work for you. And then Concepcion's going to be your separator, your burner. Who's really good after the catch, able to make guys miss. Not going to be that deep threat. He can be if you want him to with the speed that he possesses, but he can be over the intermediate parts of the field, catch the ball, make a guy miss, and then go. Rather, while DK Metcalf's just that guy that's going to run streaks for you, and then Michael Pittman's going to be that guy that runs over the middle of the field and then gets tackled after like a 12 or 15-yard gain, who's still a really good player in my opinion. You have a really decent receiver core there, but I think you need that one more piece to make it all that more exciting. I think Concepcion is certainly that. Here at 26 to the Bills, I actually debated this pick for a while, but I have them going with CJ Allen here. I think he's an incredible player. I think the Bills do need someone to replace Matt Milano, um, or just anyone defensively to really help them stop the run. And I think CJ Allen's certainly that. Um, I think he's good in coverage. I think he's very good in the run game. Really good tackler. Um, you know, as a Texans fan, he's a swarmy guy. A guy that is going to swarm to the ball and always make that play with a relentless effort. And I think he's a good player, and I think the Bills would be able to do a lot of different things defensively if they were to have an athlete like C.J. Allen who's able to get from side to side of the field so quickly. And I think he's a great player. I think he might end up in the back half of the first round, and I have him here to Buffalo. If Concepcion fell one more spot, then I would have had him there, but I think it makes a lot of sense for the Bills if they didn't have him there to go with CJ Allen. At 27 to the San Francisco 49ers, I have them going with the receiver here. I have them going with Denzel Boston. I don't know if I love the pick, but I just think you need a body in there that you can chuck the ball down the field to and then allow Ricky Pearsall to be that route artist that he can be. But I think Denzel Boston's your deep threat for you that you don't really have. Allow Christian McCaffrey to kind of play wide receiver. He wasn't the greatest running back last year. He was just such a good receiver out the backfield that they really, really utilized him over the middle of the field. Allowed Denzel Boston to be that burner that you can throw those jump balls to. I know Purdy's not really that deep throw guy, but I think Boston can be a very good player in the NFL. I think, he doesn't remind me of he reminds me of Keon Coleman, but I don't think he'll pan out the way that Keon Coleman did just because I think he's a lot better in those 50-50 balls, and I think he's somewhat better at creating separation compared to Keon Coleman. But I think Denzel Boston's a great player, and I think he can go up and get passes, which the 49ers don't really have right now. So I think that does make some sense for them there at 27. At 28 to Houston, I do have a trade down with the Arizona Cardinals, and where this is going. They are going to go get Ty Simpson. I think in real life it'd be a package of something like this. So we'll offer that or force that trade through. Arizona moves up to 28. They are going to go up and get their quarterback in Ty Simpson there. Who I think will start for them right away. Jacoby's asking for starter money, so maybe that even opts them to look quarterback even more if they don't want to pay him that. And if he decides to hold out, then you really need a quarterback there. And I think Ty Simpson could be a guy that enters that building. Maybe doesn't start right away, but if Brissett does end up holding out, then he could end up starting week 1. I think he's a decent player. He showed some really good accuracy from weeks 1 to 8 at Alabama, and then after that, kind of just dipped off. Don't know what happened there. I don't know if he was injured or just, tweaked his mechanics a little bit and it, hurt him. But he did show some really good flashes there at Alabama at that first part of the year. So I think there is some upside there with Ty Simpson. And I think the Cardinals could definitely look to a quarterback there in the first round and try to move back up. And in this case, it doesn't cost you too much. You give up a third next year, which is a little pricey in my opinion, but I think that's the premium you have to pay for a quarterback there. So Ty Simpson at 28 is that selection there. At 29 to the New York Giants, I think this board falls perfectly for you. And I think if it's like this, you're between Blake Miller and Cade McDonald. But given that you just lost your premium one tech, who can line up over the center and still get to the quarterback, I think you do need a guy that can somewhat replace him. I mean, you're not going to replace Dexter Lawrence, but you're going to have a guy that I guess you can at least rely on. You've already had 2 first-round picks with Downs and Tyson. You don't have your third because you traded it to Houston for the Jackson Dart trade. So you have 2 picks left. You could definitely trade out of this spot. I don't think you should. I think you just go with Cade McDonald here. Get the first defensive lineman off the board because that's your premium position of need. Such a good player too. I really like him as a one tech. I know some Texans fans know that I'm not the biggest fan of Caden McDonald for Houston, but that's because Houston runs a three tech with their interior defensive linemen. If the Giants want to run a 3-4, they need that big run stuffer up the middle. And Caden McDonald's certainly that. I really like that fit there for New York, and I think if you're able to facilitate a trade like that, you've had a really, really good draft so far, in my opinion. If you're New York, I could see you trading out of 37 if this is the case. Maybe get like if a tackle's at 37 still, and the Falcons come calling, you could get 48 and 79 or something like that. Or what's another team that needs tackle? The Steelers need a right tackle. Not the Chargers, excuse me. The Steelers could give up like 53 and 85 and maybe something else to move up as well. So you can see what you want to do there at 37 if you're the Giants, because I think you're looking at just developmental pieces now, because you've gotten your guy at safety, you've gotten your guy at receiver, you've gotten your guy at D tackle as well. So I think you're looking at maybe a linebacker, but I think if you trade back a little bit, then there's still those linebackers available to you. Um, Other than that, you could look running back, but I mean, there's no running back going this range, so you're in a really good spot there if that's your first three picks if you're in New York. Here at 30 with the Miami Dolphins, though, I do have them going with an offensive tackle who could maybe slot inside at guard in the NFL, and that's Caleb Lomu. I mean, your offensive line's horrible. You're just going to have to be at a spot where you can make your best five. And I think Lomu's a guy that could slot inside at guard to replace Savaiinaya, um, or just anyone on the defensive line. It's really um, just not a good offensive line unit. So, you know, I think Lomu would be a nice pick there just to insert at that left guard or even right tackle positions. Aaron Brewer is a really good center, but I think other than that, every offensive line position is replaceable. So you get a versatile guy in Lomu where you can try him out in a multitude of different positions to really be a good player. At 31 to the Patriots, I'm between Blake Miller and Ihanator here. I think I am going to go with Ihanator, though. That's who I had originally. I had Blake Miller falling out of the first round, interestingly enough, but um, I think Ihanator is a good player. I think if you develop him behind Morgan Moses for a year, then he will develop into a very good player as well. So, um, you know, I think it makes a lot of sense for the Patriots. It seems like Vrabel likes Ihanator as well after being at his pro day, trying to coach him up. 22 and a half years old. So, not the oldest guy. If Moses plays a year or two more and allows Ihanator to develop at 25, he can slot in, and then you have 8, 9 years of good production from another offensive lineman, and then you just keep churning the process. But Ihanator is such a good player, in my opinion. I think he can develop into a very solid piece along the offensive line. Um, so that's why he goes there at 31 to New England. At 32 with Seattle to close out this first round, I do have them going with a corner that can be productive on the boundary, and that is Colton Hood out of Tennessee. I think he's a good piece, and that's the end of the first round there. But I think he's a good piece that can do a lot of good things in the NFL. I think the Seahawks do need someone on that boundary to really be able to go right away after losing Tariq Woolen. And I think Colton Hood has some good technique there, and I think he'll be a good player in the NFL. And I think with how good that Seahawks front is, it does give Colton Hood a little bit of, you know, extra time, I guess, to really refine his craft a little bit in the NFL and find, what he can and can't do. So I think that flexibility will be important. And Colton Hood is there to the Seahawks at 32. So a lot of trades. You have the Chiefs moving up, you have the Cowboys moving up. Then you have the Bears moving up. You have the Cardinals moving up, and then that's about it. But let me know what y'all think about this first round mock draft down below. These are actually my official predictions. So I know there's a lot of trades in here, but I do think there's going to be a lot of trades in the first round. I just don't know where, but I could see these guys go in the first round. I think Blake Miller could certainly go. I think Terrell, McNeil Warren, I mean, Howell could even go. Parker could even go. Peter Woods might go as well. But, I mean, we'll see. Let me know what y'all think about this first round mock draft down below in the comment section below. And then you'll see day 2 of my predictions as well coming out shortly. So thank you all so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, please be sure to like, subscribe. And as always, it's Texans Takeover, and I'm out. Peace.